Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in. This is Real Talk with Coach Sherry, and this channel is about workforce development, career readiness, entrepreneurship, and of course, real life, real issues, and real talk. I want to thank you all for tuning in and hearing me share my journey with my mom as she lived with ALS. This is the 10th year anniversary that she passed, and I just wanted to capture this moment by sharing the blog that I wrote about her last 6 days of living with ALS and the journey that we were on together. I appreciate you for leaving a comment and for just staying tuned and listening to the whole entire story. Today is day 2, and I'll have day 3, 4, 5, and 6 coming up. But I wanted to just get in, and I want to thank you all again. Those of you who are subscribed to me, if you're not, I invite you now to hit the subscribe button. If you feel someone else needs to hear this story, if they are a caregiver, if they are living with ALS, if they have a disease that there is no cause or cure for, please share this. And I'm just hopeful that it will touch someone in a positive way and make a difference. Okay. Day 2, last 6 days, living with ALS. August 26, 2010, I woke up early as if I never went to sleep. The first thing I noticed when I opened my eyes was the huge picture window that I was facing. Outside, I was a witness to the most beautiful sunrise that I had ever seen. I immediately took a picture so that I could return to that moment at any given time. I stared and stared at that sunrise as if it was speaking to me. I tried to understand what it was saying, and all I could interpret was that it was a new beginning. In that time span that it took for the sun to come up, I don't believe that I even blinked or swallowed. I was mesmerized. When I could fully see the complete circle of the sun, I came back to my reality and where I was. I was laying in a recliner with a pillow smashed under my arm with a white blanket that loved my black clothing. It was very quiet, as if I was the first to wake up in a college dorm. But then I glanced over my left shoulder, and there she was, my mother, laying motionless as if she just got settled in. My heart dropped with the realization and memories of the day before. Through all the machines, I could see that she was being maintained. I stood up to wish her a good morning, but with not a stir back from her. I decided that I had to go and get myself ready for the rest of the day. I knew the doctors would come in by the droves and early. Unfortunately, the ICU room that she was in didn't have the comforts of an en-suite bathroom. I suppose they don't expect the patients in there to have to use it, and I know they definitely don't expect anyone to stay the night until me. When I came back, things had begun to bustle around. Nurses and doctors with lots of movement but little words. I could see it in their eyes, and they knew I could. Her test results were in, showing exactly what happened. I felt so much relief, similar to what I felt when we found out that she had ALS nearly 2 years prior. I know it sounds silly to feel a sense of relief upon receiving news like that, but imagine not knowing why. Before her ALS diagnosis, we didn't know why her voice had changed so. We didn't know why she kept falling as if she was a toddler, just learning how to walk. We didn't know why she could barely swallow. So getting the diagnosis put a name to the face, and now we could deal with it. With ALS, we just didn't know there was no weapons yet designed to fight it. So when the test results came back and the doctors came in and told me they knew exactly what happened the day before, I was very pleased. They were surprised at my relief, but they played along and got excited too. They said she had a heart attack and then had a textbook acute. Now, please bear with me with these scientific words. She had a textbook acute bilateral paramedian thalamic and mesencephalic infarctus, which is a stroke. They showed me the images of her brain and then showed me the images of a brain that suffered the same type of stroke that was in their literature. It nearly looked exactly the same. How easy for them, right? Only if it was that simple. However, when we were discussing our next step and they mentioned that my mother wouldn't come out of her coma and on, at that moment, my mother raised her hand. She raised it as if to say, excuse me, don't count me out yet. The doctors looked at each other, then to me, and I was beaming. My mother never ceased to amaze me, but that was a testament of serious strength and faith. They came closer and asked her a series of simple questions, and she responded by putting up one or two fingers. It was amazing. They had never seen anything like that before. So then my brain paused and started heading in another direction. How do we get her better from this? How do we get her back home? I became excited as if we won the race because to me, at that point, we were beating ALS. Doctors must have gone on the hotline because they called various colleagues and some I let in and some I didn't. And that's another story. I felt hopeful even though deep down something was tugging on my core that this was really going to be it. It felt like that final stretch to the finish line when you give it all you've got to get to the finish and finish that race strong. A few times, depending on who left the room, and if it was just her and I, she would get a spurt of restlessness. She literally would try to pull the cover off as if she wanted to get up and run. She would move about more than I had seen her do in months. I would rush to her and hold her in my arms and try to comfort her. At times, her eyes would be opened and she would look towards me, but it was as though she was looking at me for the first time. I could sense the nurse standing in the doorway at the ready when this would happen, but I would have my back to the door holding my mother in my arms. Then before she would close her eyes and go back into a coma-like demeanor, she would look up on the wall as if she was looking at the crown molding. Her eyes would dance along that line, and sometimes it would make her still like she was watching a favorite show. I asked her, what does she see? Mom, what do you see? She would actually raise up a little like she wanted to make sure not to miss one thing. I asked her, did she see her mother who had passed away a year before I was born? She slightly shook her head no. I asked her, did she see her dad who had passed away in the early 90s? She slightly shook her head no. I asked her, did she see her favorite aunt who passed away a month before her 101-year birthday in 2009? She slightly shook her head no. I asked her, did she see Jesus? And she paused and laid back down and closed her eyes as if that never happened. That night, the ALS Association DMV chapter was having their kickoff for their annual Walk to Defeat ALS. This was going to be our first walk, and we were very excited. Months before, the ALS Association DMV chapter had asked our family to be the ambassador family for the upcoming walk. My mother was very honored to participate in that role. She really wanted to make a difference with ALS so that whoever came behind her would have a better chance. The walk was going to be in October at Browns Island in Richmond, Virginia. The kickoff was near the hospital, and we were scheduled to speak before all of this occurred. I still wanted to honor our commitment, so Sarah Stein, who was our advocate, amazing, and she was an angel, our ALS angel on earth. She picked me up from the hospital, and we were at the kickoff in a matter of minutes. Walking in and seeing everyone, I finally looked down at myself, oh my goodness, and realized I must have looked a sight. My clothes were rumpled, my hair was like bedhead, and I had a huge overnight type bag on my shoulders. But you know what? Ultimately, I didn't care. I just wanted to be there to share our story. After dinner, several people were introduced. The new executive director, who shared a very touching story of her own journey with ALS. Her dad lived with it and passed away when she was a young girl. Then it was my turn to take the podium. I didn't know exactly what I was going to say, so I just spoke from the heart and said the things that I knew my mother would have wanted to share. It felt so exhilarating and empowering. Later that evening, Sarah Stein took me back to the hospital. I always walked through there as if it were my Richmond mansion. Never mind when visiting hours were. Never mind I wasn't supposed to stay in the room with my mother. Those rules were for visitors, not me. So I went up to my mother's room. The lights were dim, and I gushed in and happily told her everything that occurred that night at the kickoff. That was the first time in my entire life that I had a one-sided conversation with my mother, as she laid there like she had for the majority of the day, motionless. I kissed my mom and told her good night. This was day 2 of our last 6 days of living with ALS. Thank you for tuning in and watching and sharing this journey with me. This has been Real Talk with Coach Sherry.